Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Morata.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Boone Cutler, and you're watching The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Look, so as we kind of gear up towards Veterans Day, I like to load more veterans into the program because those of us that aren't actively sworn in serving anymore, we're still serving. We take that oath seriously.
Sure. Continue
to lean on problems and continue to provide our expertise. Yesterday, Colonel Jim Gillespie, who's still in, and I talked in a ranging conversation about the complexities of foreign policy and how we deal with problems and also not get into shit we don't need to get into, like explaining how complicated Turkey is because it's part Middle Eastern, it's part Europe, it's part Asia. And if it goes anywhere else, it's in Africa. It's this complex place that it doesn't abide simplistic thought and simplistic approaches. And so maybe you don't want to get into it at all. Maybe you have to get into it because we're the big dog. So we talked about a lot of these things. You approach this stuff from a completely different avenue and something that I've done a lot of myself and advised on in combat zones from the psychological operations stuff. It must, speaking as a spy, I watch people do things and I'm like, you guys are all fucking with me. I see you doing things. You must go crazy watching everybody try to bamboozle everybody else.
Oh, I mean, it's information overload all the time, and it's down to, everybody's individual, mindset. It's crazy. I mean, if people knew all that was being done, and I think they're starting to pick it up with shows like Social Dilemma that just came out. I think that's on Netflix. I think everybody should be watching that. But, when you understand how they can target with the marketing through social media, how they can go to different websites to attract you, just to get you there, to drop a cookie on you. Once they drop that cookie on there, they start building your personality profile, and they can tell you. Remember, the media or I'll put it this way, the government has never been about telling you the truth. They just have been about telling you what you'll believe.
Yeah.
And so now they have this profile for exactly what you as an individual believe. Yesterday, I was watching the Black News Channel. It's actually called Black News Channel, BNC. You could tell that there's messaging. You go to Fox. I mean, it's everywhere. And if you go on some of the websites that any of these places are putting out, you're going to get cookies. And once you get the cookie, it sends out all the information telling people, exactly how to get to you up in here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that thing constantly learns and it gets better at giving you more of what you think you need. And it doesn't take you to a good place as a norm. I mean, that Social Dilemma movie is great. That Tristan Harris. I mean, I've talked with that guy before, and he's right. We've got this design specifically like slot machines to hook us into media, and then just the open, not even spinning, the absolute fabrication of the truth that a lot of media outlets do.
Absolute fabrication. The use of innuendo, the use of basically getting you in front of that message and just reinforcing things you already believe. I mean, it is right now, social media and the internet can absolutely appeal to every one of your deepest, darkest fears. It can appeal to your every fantasy. Yep. It can appeal to, anything that you need, for your own health or living or shopping. It's literally got all of it. And so it's going to give you whatever you ask for, whatever you're interested in and you're searching for and you're buzzing around. It's going to give you, it's going to saturate you with it until it owns you. And that's where people are at right now. And they don't realize how bad it is or how important this is. But you are, forget a fingerprint, forget a thumbprint. We're talking about a complete psychological personality print that people can tap into at any time.
Yesterday, maybe the day before, the New York Times continued to backtrack from its support of the 1619 Project as we continue to say, hey, there's so many inaccuracies in this. So that now they couch it as, we're proud of the conversation that's been started from this monumental work. and it's no longer proud to support the facts, on this historical thing. It's like, yeah, it started a conversation that's important. I mean, look at that spin. Like, if you already bought into what 1619 was selling, and I'm openly critical of it because, look, we have history. We know these things, right? And so let's work on the actual problem. Let's not try to reconstitute what we think the problem was. When you see the New York Times, this is the New York Times, the paper of record, slowly backtracking away from this problematic project that doesn't deal in the truth. Man, I can't trust the New York Times even. I can't trust the FBI because we know they lie to us.
Wait, back up. We're talking about the same thing that we're talking about, because let's say, okay, the New York Times. You don't think people are targeting the writers of the New York Times? You don't think the New York Times writers, their journalists, their staff is just as affected by all this stuff we're talking about with micro-targeting, micro-messaging, dropping cookies? I mean, you can get them to do things. You can go on LinkedIn, find any writer on the New York Times, find people that are associated with them, find them on other social media spots, find out people who are close to them. When I see somebody just all of a sudden pop up out of the blue and they become some sort of iconic figure, my first thing is, if it's a male, I say, who is his wife's best friend?
Yeah.
Who is his wife's best friend? Because this is how things are done. So all these things that are happening, even through the media, people remember, a useful idiot is an unwitting participant. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And so to find unwitting participants and cultivate them from key positions, you're going to see stuff that looks crazy, because that is the thing that's drawing people with their fears, with their desires, with their fantasies. And it's 24/7. I mean, we are as close to, besides the pod, we're in the Matrix.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of manipulation that goes on. Edward Snowden did this. He proved that we were spying. I mean, this is the one thing that Americans are against. That's why we siloed, right? And the moment we de-silo, they start stealing away civil liberties. They start spying. And this sounds super conspiratorial, but it's a fact.
It's not. It's a fact. Watch. I think it's the Good American. It's the guy that was at the NSA.
Yeah,
I think so, that's the name of it. That blows your mind. Now, if you take that, see, it's turning it inside out. What he was talking about, how he can get all this metadata to understand what people would do and have this predictive profiling. Well, when you backwards engineer that, now you have PSYOP.
Right.
So that's what they've done. So if you watch, the Social Dilemma, the Good American, there's a couple others out there, and this is all true. I mean, this is factual, true. It's not in the mainstream media because, quite honestly, they're a part of it. We're in the Matrix, man. Besides the pod and the thing sticking in the back of your head, you're in the Matrix.
One of the other things that's important to realize too is they used to have this site. I'm not sure if it exists anymore. It's called They Rule. And you could type in Joe Biden, for example, and it would show you, like spiderweb, like who he's associated with in terms of friends, what boards he sits on, all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden you put in like another name, totally different, not even adjacent, totally different politically and everything else. And you're like, bam, bam, bam. And then all these link analysis things start happening. You're like, well, shit, these guys are all in this together, all of it. And that's, again, it sounds super conspiratorial, but it's a reality, so the person who masters human manipulation for Facebook is employable at any of these places, whether it's the NSA, the Trump campaign, the Biden campaign. They do not care. Where's the paycheck? Put another zero behind it, and I'm there, right? So these things, when you look at Facebook and you get mad, or Twitter or whatever it is, it's the same. I'm correct in thinking this, right? And then, like you said, then you get your agents together and you get your New York Times reporters, because you're not compromising their integrity. They're self-selecting into this role to be an agent of change for this change that this element wants to create. Am I getting any of this wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. And you're going to get everything you're looking for. You're going to get everything your personality is screaming for. It's going to link you up with, go look at your social media. You've got people that are influencers, key communicators. And if you look at the people that are really paying attention to them, you could see how things meld together in the different groups and within our own community. And you talk about how people are interlinked. Well, yeah, but that's also natural. Because if you look at, okay, the Biden connected all these people, well, they're in the same boat. They're all doing the same types of stuff. It's the same within our community. Look at the veteran influencers. We all know who each other is. I mean, we can, we're one phone call away from each other at any given time. It's not that difficult. So that continues to go on, but now it's supercharged because we hypnotize ourselves with this thing we call social media.
When we look at how we receive certain things, I'm thinking back to what you were talking about on your social media during the Soleimani hit and then the subsequent actions. We were going to start World War III. Here comes World War III. And it's like, and I had to say, calm down, everybody. There's incoming coming. You and I both know this, like incoming coming. That ain't nothing. There's an alarm. Hopefully we all go to wherever we can get to. Maybe you get injured, maybe you don't, but that's the cost of business, something like that. But there are folks that genuinely don't remember the fact that there was no World War III, that Iran stopped pushing, stopped abducting American boats because we said, here's the cost of doing that now for you guys. Why don't we remember these things? Why aren't we able to process them as a nation and say, yeah, Soleimani hunted you, me, because you were Sadr City, I've driven around just south of Sadr. I used to, when we weren't allowed to go into Sadr City anymore, we got as close as we could. I was one of those guys every night. And they would hang EFPs in trees and they would try to kill us all the time. So I'm glad Soleimani's dead. How do we get so divided on someone so fucking evil? A guy that blew up someone's wedding for political purposes. How do we ever get to the point where we're like, yeah, this guy is a hero of some kind?
Well, obviously, we're not all on the same team anymore. Yeah, I mean, it behooves certain agendas for people to not think Soleimani was a bad guy. It behooves certain, cui bono, who benefits. So, who benefits from somebody softening his image in America? Iran. Who is the agent of that benefit? Well, now you know who they work for.
Right.
See what I mean? So we're not all on the same team anymore. And again, once everything goes geopolitical and we stop focusing on our own country, these are the things we get. These deals in the Ukraine and China, and I'm sure that's we're just barely scratching the top of the surface. But I mean, it used to be that type of corruption between U.S. politicians and businesses in the U.S. As we go geopolitical, we go global, it's going to be the same thing is going to occur. It's just going to be on a different and bigger paradigm.
What do we do about all this stuff? How do we get on the same team? I mean, I'm Sebastian Younger gave me the tasking that guys like us, we're supposed to gather Americans in the middle. And, the middle's terrifying. That's why we can do it. But folks don't want to get in the middle. They want to fucking separate and they want to not be on the same team. What do we do about that? Can we do anything about it?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to do all the way around is get over the cognitive dissonance. We may have lost a couple generations already, to be honest with you. But if those that are in the know, who know how to educate, I'm not gonna completely spill the beans, but I am coming out with an educational series for specific age groups to talk about these types of things. So as kids get older, I mean, when we were growing up, you got told the birds and the bees when you were a certain age. You got told certain things when you're a certain age. Well, it's or don't go over near that house or stay away from that neighborhood. Or you had to learn your operational environment as you were growing up. Now we have a different operational environment for kids that are growing up, and they become very susceptible to all the messaging and all the psychological operations as they grow. So what we have to do is make sure that we're teaching them at a young enough age to be able to identify and see what they're looking at when they are seeing that manipulation, so they are not manipulated, so they do understand, how to compare and contrast things and make decisions independently. That really has to be a focus in our culture now. And again, we may have lost one or two generations, but if we can start maneuvering now and doing these tutorials, this teaching of younger people about how not to be manipulated, I think that's how we start dealing with the problem.
All right, let's flip the glass around and turn it into a mirror, and let's look at ourselves. How do we know that the direction that we're going is wrong? Like what makes us so resistant to having a society that is manipulated in one common direction. I mean, we use Sweden and Norway all the time, places that are ethnically homogenous. They go in one direction. It's like, it's time to wear a mask. They all put the mask on. And in a lot of ways, our diversity really binds us up. It causes us a lot of distrust problems, right? So how do we become a hive mind? I mean, is this necessarily a bad thing?
I don't think we necessarily do become a hive mind in the United States. I think as there's the door swings both ways before it comes to center. We had a period of time in our history where everything was taught from an elder down, and it was usually someone you knew or someone you paid, whether it's a teacher, a professor, an uncle, an aunt, a teacher. It was always in that format. Now, so you would get wisdom when you would get knowledge because you were learning knowledge from someone who had wisdom. Well, now if you go on the internet, you can find the answer to any question on the planet, but you can't get any wisdom because you're not talking to a person. So we have people out here. So let me reframe this. For up until now, we've been able to have wisdom and we've been able to have information melded together, but it was always from one perspective. Now what's changed is we can get information from multiple perspectives without a whole lot of wisdom. So there's a lot of sorting out that has to be done. So now we've had one extreme to the other. The door is swung one way, the door is now going the other. And at some point in time, we'll meet in the middle. And I think it starts with teaching people about the messaging and what they're seeing and how they're seeing it, how they're affected by it. No different. I mean, it's psychological nutrition that you're consuming every time you're looking at a screen. Do you want candy or do you want something that's going to be helpful to you? So once we understand that now that people have all this information from all these different perspectives, not all of it is healthy. They need to pick through it. Then we come back to a center, we'll have some wisdom, but it'll be wisdom with more information. So I think we're getting to the right place. I don't think we should necessarily fight change, but we should definitely be aware that if we're not making our own decisions, we can't get to that hive mind based in logic. Right now we have hive minds in our country that are everything is emotional. Everything is based on what buttons can be pushed. And when you're in that state, you're just being controlled. Yeah. Protect your mind, control your emotions. If you're not controlling your emotions, you're definitely not protecting your mind. If that makes any sense.
No, that makes sense. I mean, we're talking, in society and here on the show about the Black Lives Matter movement and social justice, and not from a point of rejection, but we've had artists on, we've had a variety of people who talk from a variety of points of view on this problem because no one person has the answer, it turns out. But one of the things that I have discovered is that if you actually care, if Black lives actually matter to you, then you should have an understanding of the problem. You can't just stop at emotion, as you're suggesting, because when you start to bring race into a logical problem, it rots the logic out, because there's no room for anything else. If I was to say, Boone, you're a racist, what do you now say to that? You go, no, I'm not. And they're like, it doesn't matter. It's over. Conversation's over because the emotion and the race took over. So you don't get to even have a rigorous conversation to develop some wisdom, right? I mean, I'm desperate to develop wisdom, right? I'm middle-aged. This is the time for me to take my experience and synthesize it into some kind of good counsel for people and to continue to expand that in the show. And you have a show. You gather so much knowledge. How do you process that into, cogent thoughts that are filled with wisdom? But I don't know that people are prepared to work that hard to get wisdom as a norm. And I think that's always been true, but how does one gather wisdom, Boone? How does one get away from, you say protect, avoid emotion, protect the mind, but how does one actually do that? How does one gather wisdom?
Well, first, I think it's typically from an elder that can understand your situation and the nuances of your situation. That's the problem with seeking information. When people need wisdom, they're getting information from the internet. So they don't have someone that's older than them who understands them, who's a family, who understands the nuances of their personality, their circumstances, their situation. That's where you get wisdom from. You can't get that. And so we're missing our eldership in our country. right now. We're missing eldership. Young people don't think they even need old people, because why do I need them? I can just type in my question in the internet and it tells me my answer. That's all I need. And I don't need more than that. So they don't get the lecture. They get the sound bite. They get something that's big enough you can put into a text. When they're looking for wisdom, wisdom comes with a lecture. I'm sorry, it does. Every time it comes with a lecture of some sort, whether in your own mind when you get the aha effect or someone standing in front of you. If you're trying to get wisdom from social media, from the internet, it's going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be very confusing. Like I said, you're going to get information from a lot of perspectives, but you're not going to get the wisdom that you're necessarily looking for. And we got to become wise enough to figure that out, and wise enough to understand, if I'm trying to figure out how to replace a bumper on my car, I can go to YouTube. But if I want to figure out how to find a wife, I should probably talk to somebody who's done it well.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right about that. I saw a meme, and again, we can't be driven by memes. We have to be more rigorous than that. But basically it said, basically it was suggesting that you should have a mentor who's in their 20s. And, what do we think about that? It's like, well, okay, maybe in a very specific siloed area that you're trying to improve upon, maybe, like, hey, I'd like to learn coding so I can unlock the power of the computer and everything. But in terms of life, I can't take that concept seriously. Like, you've not had anybody you love die, or if it was an elder person. You've not had your best friend come and have to live on your couch because their life was exploded by life. All of these things, these tragedies you have to go through to go, I don't know the first thing about anything. I'm just going to do my best. This person's trying to do that. I mean, how many people think that everybody is, for the most part, trying to do their best, and that's a lesson of experience, so we get these things where these concepts of, only young people are smart and adaptable. I'll take you and I right now. We don't have to even worry about it. You and I know that if we went to a combat zone, an exceptionally dangerous place, you were going to do your PSYOP thing. I was going to do my spy thing. And we brought some 21-year-old kid with whatever skills they had. You wouldn't be worried about me. I wouldn't be worried about you. We'd be worried about that kid and their ability to be wise enough, to be adaptable enough to deal with the hard ass shit that you have to deal with.
Yeah. And we talk about younger people they're so pliable. They're so pliable. Well, pliable and resiliency sometimes aren't the same thing, and I don't see the resiliency, at least I don't see it in the way that I've seen it in the past. And it could just be me, but obviously things are going to change. The things I see right now, like, okay, how do we fix some of the, because if we don't change this trajectory, we're going to really be in the matrix. I mean, it's never going to change. So, but it will change, because people are going to get wise, and they're going to understand how they're being manipulated, and then they're going to work that into their conscious mind and be able to sort things out. I just think it's going to take time. And first thing, like you said, you have to identify the problem. And right now, most people, by and large, have not identified this as a problem.
One of the other problems is we want to take on all of these problems. We BLM is a great example. I'm going to get emotional. I'm going to get upset about it. I'm going to argue about it. Yeah, but do you actually care? Do Black lives actually matter to you? Will you take the time to actually know who Dylan Noble is? Well, who's Dylan Noble? Well, there we go. If Black lives matter, if this cop, scenario is true, you should know who Dylan Noble is, because it creates problems for the argument, right? And it's okay to say, I know there is suffering in Syria, and I have empathy for that, but I just don't have the time to deal with it, or I care that there are wildfires all over California, but what am I going to do about it? I live in Iowa. I empathize, but I have no energy for that problem. And it's okay to say that. We're so afraid to say, that we don't actually care. We're so afraid of that. Like, do you actually care about Iraq? Do you actually care about Kurds? Can any of you name one Kurd? Do any of you know that Kurdistan is not an actual country? Or do we just want to complain about Donald Trump? I mean, these are things, Boone, we can't be distracted by these things. We got to pick the one or two things that we really care about and put our energy into it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to take a Bible reference, it'd be 1 Corinthians 12:12. The body's made up of many parts. And so, the hand doesn't necessarily care what the eye sees. The hand is doing its job. It has to care about what its job is. And we don't all have the same job. We don't all have the same purpose or mission here. So we have to work together. You've got yours, I've got mine, and together. But nobody's an expert on everything. Nobody could possibly, invest themselves into everything. It is not possible. But we're afraid to say that we can't or we won't, because then we're a bad person. We don't care.
I heard a great thing. What's that?
It's just pragmatism. I mean,
Yeah.
It's just we're losing pragmatism at a pretty quick rate.
I like to play the practical advocate as opposed to the devil's advocate, because the practical advocate, I think, is a better way to approach these things. The practical advocate's like, can we actually, what does it take? You want to have you've got a podcast. I got a podcast. The practical advocate would say, yeah, but every day, what can you do for your show? Well, I don't have time for that. Well, then you probably shouldn't have a podcast. Like, the practical advocate says, if you can't exercise every day, what can you do? Well, I can do 100 push-ups a day. Okay, great. Do that and build from there. That's the practical advocate,
Right.
But we don't like to look at what we have to do nonstop. It's boring to do 100 push-ups a day. It ain't that hard, but it's fucking boring. And it takes that grit that we all talk about, that gonus, that desire. And day-to-day things, man, they're pretty fucking boring.
That's true. They are boring, and picking up new things takes consistency. Now you're breaking down into something that we both know very well is discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the discipline? In order to do things you don't like to do, you have to be disciplined on some level. And there's, again, in our society, I hear this beckoning loud message that says people don't want to be uncomfortable. Well, it's kind of unrealistic. And I think, whether it's uncomfortable with bills or uncomfortable with just being challenged on your beliefs and having to stand up for yourself, being uncomfortable about whatever. I mean, we've made words punitive now. It's not just the words aren't just distasteful. They're punitive. They can get you hurt. They can get you put in jail. A lot of things can happen to you over words these days. Where does this stop? Where does this slippery slope stop? I'm kind of losing track of my thought, but I just think that we really need to think things through, because it's going to be hard to get back from this. We got to work with the kids. People who are smart on the situation need to start interfacing with kids and saying, hey, listen, guys, don't be the fool. And this is what the fool looks like. There used to be, when we were growing up, it was sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Not today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not today. Where's the resiliency again? I see people being pliable, but I don't see the resiliency.
Yeah, I hear you. Another thing too is we're sort of overall bad judges of what's important for us, for our goals. Like, who are you? What do you do? And then where do you need to spend your time? Because, the stoic in me is like, hey, if you worked 95% harder at being a more resilient, capable you're not going to have that much time for fucking with other people's problems. You're just going to work within your sphere, your circle. And when you get resolute enough to be able to withstand most things, then you can reach out to that person next to you and stop trying to solve these big, impossible problems and just get to these everyday, reliable, incremental amelioration type things that you can I can go out and I can pick a homeless person and I can say, anytime you want a meal, that Del Taco over there, they're going to give it to you. And I go to that manager of that Del Taco and I say, if this guy right here, Kevin, if he ever comes over here, give him a taco and a Coke and some fries. And when you get to $100 on the tab, let me know. I'll send the money over right away. Like, that's just a small thing, but you literally would feed a guy, you can do that. That isn't hard. In the time it takes to do that, you could do 5 different long-winded Facebook posts about some shit that you don't know enough about and aren't going to change anybody's mind anyhow.
True. All valid. Some stuff I could do myself on that forefront too.
Yeah, I had a guy. He's had a sign said "homeless veteran, need help," and I pulled up, and I was at a light, and I'm like, "Hey man, what's up? What do you need?" I don't care if he's lying. I don't start there. Oh, he's lying. I don't start there. I start with, what do you need? How can I help? Man, you know what? A pair of socks would be great. Well, fuck, I got socks. Hang on. Do you mind if they're a little dirty? No, I don't care. I just need socks. Bam, socks right there, side of the road. You know? If the guy's lying, I don't care. If that's his hustle is to say, you look at his feet, you're like, that guy needs socks. In an instant, you know? Just stop and look around. There's plenty of people in need. I want to get into your charity next. This is sort of my transition. But why are we so hard on people who are desperate for help? Why do we, if someone is an alcoholic and they're on the street and they use drugs to survive, why are we sweating them access to the money that they need? That's like not feeding them. You know, it's horrible to say, but someone who needs drugs to live, like, yeah, you're going to have to just go ahead and go through withdrawals. It's callous. We can help a person out. Like, do you want food or do you want booze? I want booze. All right, great. Here you go. You know, I can't fix your problem, but I can give you this one little bit of help.
Everybody's got to come around. The whole homeless thing, that's a other topic for me, because there's so many of them, that there's so many people that are homeless that have brain damage that we could resolve and make and get these people off with stem cells. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's 80% have brain damage, and with stem cells and with maybe norepinephrine, human growth hormone, activating the pituitary does a lot of things for the brain. It's helped me a lot. I think that we can solve that problem rather than just kind of dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of I know I segued out of where you were talking, but I had to take that opportunity.
No, but it's where we're going. I mean, the TBI thing, the more we learn about TBI, the more we realize it's everywhere. That concussive blast that didn't have a physical thing hit your body, had a physical thing that hit your brain, and how many of those things can guys like us withstand before all of a sudden you've got this invisible wound? You're like, why won't my emotions work normal anymore? Why do I get angry and frustrated at the dumbest things where I look back and I'm like, why in the hell? I can withstand so much damage. You hit me in the right emotional button in my brain, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah, and also with the TBI stuff, being able to learn new things is not is more than a little difficult. Mm-hmm. So, just getting through. And what do you do when you get out of the military? You have to learn to be a civilian. What is difficult when you have TBI? Learning new things. So, I mean, all these things intersect at some point, and we have to deal with the root issue. If you have the desire, but you don't have the capability, okay, what can I do to give you the capability to help you have the capability so you can put your desire to work? Yeah. And right now we've had, and we will have, and we have had, a lot of war fighters who were dealing with brain damage, and people were treating it like it was like they were psych issues. Right. And I don't, I mean, it's almost cruel in my mind to use psych meds on someone that has brain damage. It's not going to go well. It's not going to work out. So you're not going to get the desired effect. So, we have to be looking at things like, okay, what do we do to help the brain, rather than just trying to mitigate the emotions with drugs?
We had Dr. Kabran Chopik on. He's a brain recovery expert, and he was saying you have to realize if you took the brain out of the skull and put it on a table, it's in a few minutes, it's the consistency of butter. It is so delicate. You put it back in the brain, it's protected, but it's easy to damage it. And things like sugar consumption. I mean, we know now that sugar, basically we shouldn't have any sugar at all. But
no, sugar's all bad for the brain.
Yeah, sugar's all bad for the brain, the rest of the body too. But we look at all of these things, all of these ways we harm the brain. It's no wonder that someone struggles, because you're running on, 20 octane fuel, with spikes in it. Literally, sugar has spikes. It tears shit apart. These things are dramatic in their terms of how we deal with, day-to-day life. If you've got a TBI, or if you do, I mean, how many times does TBI go undiagnosed?
A lot.
Yeah. And then we're getting better at this. And this I'll give to Donald Trump. He's done a good job in making the VA more open to improving. The VA that I go to is a lot better than it was during the last administration. And that's not a knock on President Obama. This shit's hard, and I'm sure the VA will slide back into not as good. And I'm not saying the VA is perfect, far from it. But one of the things I bring up with my therapist is like, what about weed? What about mushrooms? What about these things that we're seeing? She's like, yeah, we're doing more and more trials in this stuff. Maybe you can get into a clinical trial. get some relief, get some benefit there. So there is progress, but goddamn, it is slow, man. I mean, thank God we're not the Vietnam era. Those guys really had to suffer. They wouldn't even believe them. Tell me about it.
Hey, this is P.A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here, and if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
So there is progress, but goddamn, it is slow, man. I mean, thank God we're not the Vietnam era. Those guys really had to suffer. They wouldn't even believe them. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I put all that information in this book here. It's FPL. Half the profits go back to Task Force Dagger, the Task Force Dagger Foundation. But it's exactly what you're talking about. It's the stuff, through the years as I've had to deal with my injuries and problems. I talk about all the stuff that I tried, all the stuff I did, all the stuff that worked, all the stuff that didn't work, all the stuff that still works. And it ends up being a roadmap for people, and so like you and me and a lot of war fighters. So that's how we can kind of get through it. And it's small enough. I wrote it TBI friendly. I wrote it actually in verse, if you can see it, like Sun Tzu. So it's very, you can keep track of it. It's very easy to read. It's small. You can get through it in about an hour. But by the time you get through with it, you have a reference for all the things that we're talking about right now. And then also the book also encourages people to come up with their own functional, personalized lifestyle based upon things that work. So this is, the conversation is happening. We're talking about this stuff, but we also have to talk about the fact that there's been so much stuff that hasn't worked. Like again, I say stem cells for shell shock. When we originally called it shell shock, that's what it was. The brain was damaged from the concussive impact from explosives. From there, you have central sleep apnea. Central sleep apnea ends up affecting the heart. Now you have soldier's heart. So that's how soldier's heart comes from being shell shock. These were all the right terms. We just didn't have the science behind it when these terms were used. And at some point in time, we slammed it on to a psychiatric diagnosis and called it PTSD. And then nobody dealt with the brain anymore. They dealt with behavior, but behavior is only a small portion of everything that's going on when you're having brain damage issues.
We had a kid die in a patrol one day. Wasn't a mark on him. He got killed by the concussion of the blast. And maybe he had some congenital thing I never found out, but sure shit, sitting there dead as hell. Like, hey, why didn't he come out? We went and looked and it was already too, and maybe it took us 10 minutes to figure out that he wasn't in his spot because, an IED is chaotic.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, that's how delicate someone can be. This is a young, healthy person 1 minute, and the next minute, literally no metal object hits him. And he's gone. This is what happens. And so if you get 10% of that, what does that do to your body? And if you get that, I mean, I don't know how many times you've been blown up, but is it 10 times? Is it 20 times? Is it 2 times? Is it one really big time? Exactly.
I was one time.
Yeah. Yeah. You get 40% of that hit that kid took. What did you do to your brain, your heart, your lungs? What kind of damage did you take, from that blast wave? And like you said, we had good names for it before. Now we're calling it PTSD and all these other things. But
yeah, we've completely convoluted the whole issue, and as a result, there have been a lot of people that have come back from war that have been put on psych meds, made them more suicidal. They've died, or they've just completely lost the will to do anything. And now more sickness on top of sickness, and just the lack of desire to be healthy anymore because you can't do anything on the drugs. So, as your desire comes down, then it's even harder to give somebody the capability to overcome their situation, or at least show them the way. So this is my complaint. That's what a lot about this book is. It's about, let's really talk about what's working. Cannabis is working. Some psychedelics are absolutely working. There are not enough guys getting sleep studies, which is causing a myriad of problems. The burn pits are a real issue. We need to deal with these things. So it's all in one spot now. It's all in one spot, and people can read through that, and they'll be they'll be smart on the situation. They can make decisions for themselves.
Yeah. And then for those that want to get the book, it's on pre-sale right now, right? On Amazon?
No, it's live right now. You can get it on
good.
Amazon. It's called FPL, Boone Cutler Protocols for Warfighters, and it's $9.99. It's cheap. Like I said, you can read it in an hour, and you've got everything in one spot.
I'm putting it into the show notes now for anybody who's watching live. You can get that at bam right there, Boone Cutler, or you can go to Amazon. Let me get the Amazon link here for you.
No, you can't. You can't get it from my book, from my website. Just go to Amazon.
All right, my bad. Let me correct that then. Okay. Always trying to drive traffic to the website, Boone. You know how it is.
No, I appreciate it, and I never do anything with the websites.
There is the Amazon link. So if you're a service member or you know someone in your life who's a service member, maybe they're acting a little kooky. Here's the thing: if you could see TBI or PTSD on someone's arm, you would treat them completely differently than we treat regular people. It's not an easy thing to see. It doesn't always hurt. I walk out of my house some days, and I literally want to kill myself. And then I walk back in the house, I do my little exercise to get my brain in a different orientation, and I walk back out of the house out of another door. But if you saw that on my arm, you'd say, like, God damn, Pete, go back in the house and wash that thing off. It's horrible. That must hurt like hell. And it does. It sucks. But we don't see it. And so we treat people differently. And like you said, we call it different things. We're not sure how to deal with it. So get FPL for someone in your life, including yourself. And you know that Boone's done this journey, so it'll be good work.
Yeah, do me a favor. Throw an E at the end of my name.
Oh,
there,
sorry, man.
The correct spelling. It's okay. Yeah, it's all the time.
There, I'm doing this stuff live.
You're your own producer.
Yeah. And I blame some of this stuff on getting blown up. Like I struggle to see mistakes. It's my excuse, but I'm not sure it's an excuse.
No, I get the same thing, and then frustration happens.
Yeah, it's plain as day when I come back and look at it. And I'm like, how the hell did I do that? But anyhow, that aside, FPL, it sounds like a good resource. I'll be getting a copy of it. And if you need a copy, let me know. I'll always give you my copy, and I'll buy another one from Boone. And like you said, the revenue from this, at least some of it, goes to charity, and that's a good thing. Which charity are you sending it to? Dagger what?
Yeah, it's Task Force Dagger Foundation. Great group of guys, do a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff on the health side. I work with Jeff Dardia. He's the co-author on the book, and he runs Task Force Dagger, their Special Operation Forces health initiatives. So they're looking for different ways for warfighters to be treated for problems like heavy metal toxicity, which is never even acknowledged most of the time. So it's a big deal. It's a good thing. So we want to put money towards them so they can keep doing the finding the information, getting the information, and putting protocols together to help people get healthy again.
I saw a picture of you getting a hunk of money from the VA. Is that the VA, or is it what was it that you were doing? Is the VA that you guys got for
money? I didn't get any money.
All right, some kind of backing then, like from Spartan Pledge or something. What was that?
Yeah, we became official partners.
That's what it was.
With the VA for regarding suicide prevention. So the Spartan Pledge, and specifically Soldier Hard, the Spartan Pledge being used through Gallant Few, is now in partnership with the VA to work with them regarding suicide prevention.
Man, how that. This is one of the things that folks don't know. Obviously Scott and I do Save the Brave, same kind of mission, different approach and all that. There's plenty of room for all this, but I'm really sick of getting that call or seeing that post from a friend of mine whose friend has killed themselves. It's just during this pandemic, it's like we forget that there are other people suffering right now, every day, day to day, and the pandemic only exacerbates it. So first off, thanks for working on it, man. What makes you positive about our combined approaches across the veteran spectrum for suicide? And that also realize that suicide's going up in society in general, among different ethnicities. So talk a little bit about the goal and the mission and the progress.
Well, what we do with the Spartan Pledge, basically brings self-awareness to somebody. And it also it gives that outlet, because you take the Spartan Pledge, you don't take it because yourself, you might have a bad day. That's not why you take the Spartan Pledge. You take your Spartan Pledge because you care about somebody else. You have somebody close to you that at some point in time they may need to reach out for themselves. And so you're saying ahead of time, hey, if this happens, I'm the guy you call. I'm the person. So when you get into that histrionic state of mind, you really, can't wrap your head around anything other than what's negative. It becomes a battle drill. The Spartan Pledge is a battle drill. It's what to do when you don't know what to do. And you've already made the agreement with somebody else. So when you get in that state of mind, you just pick up the phone. And usually as soon as the call goes through, the histrionic thinking stops. It deviates. It diminishes. It dissolves. And so that's why this is so important. And the other part of the Spartan Pledge is to maintain a mission. Because if you don't have a purpose in your life, that's one reason I think the suicide rate is really going up right now across the board, is because people don't have a sense of mission. They're in their houses. They're looking at their phone. They only see people through Zoom. It doesn't really feel like you can accomplish much if you're always stuck behind four walls. So, that's an issue. So we like to say with the Spartan Pledge, maintain a battle buddy and a mission, and everything else will work itself out. You'll find a way. Good news, we've got some additional good news regarding the Spartan Pledge. It's now been modified for first responders, and there's a first responder Spartan Pledge. And just like for warfighters, there's a sword, a Spartan sword made from the metal of the wreckage from the World Trade Center. Now there's an axe and a first responder Spartan Pledge, and it's also made from the metal from the wreckage of the World Trade Center. So now we're saturating different areas. We're saturating first responders and we're saturating warfighters.
Wow, that's cool, man. That's super neat. How successful is it in terms of that? I mean, it's one thing to have a pledge. Someone very, very, very close to me attempted suicide recently, and I want them to have a Spartan Pledge. Like, how does this work? How do I help this person that's been on the edge of the building before? And that's figuratively speaking. I'm not being exact here, but someone who you're passionate to help, but you can only do things like, let's set up a Spartan Pledge. What does it work, and how do you ensure that person, as much as possible, will actually pick up that phone?
Well, I think the reason it works so well, I was asked if I could adapt it to junior high kids. And I said, well, first of all, they have to understand, what an ethos is. Because when you're making a pledge means nothing if a person doesn't have a personal ethos about themselves, the way they carry themselves, something they believe in. It just doesn't work because if you have no standards and you make a promise and you don't, then you're not going to keep your promise. So you have to start with a group of people that believes in living by an ethos. And what do we have there? We've got military and first responders, by and large, to serve a cause greater than self. So I think the Spartan Pledge works very well, and that's why it's so effective in our communities, because it's tailored for people who serve a cause greater than themselves. It's basically taking the warrior ethos and flipping it on its head. So that's why it's effective more than what you see, what they call suicide contracts. Like you sign a contract with your doctor that says, "Oh, I won't commit suicide." Well, that's anybody over something that has no ethos attached to it. A warfighter who's taken an oath, who understands what that means, who understands how important that is, who understands the relationship with that other person that goes through similar difficulties in their experiences in combat. Well, now that whole paradigm changes. We're not talking about some innocuous signature on a piece of paper. We're talking about something people care about. And I think that's why the Spartan Pledge works in our communities. Can it be adapted to other places? Yes. Will it be as effective? Probably not, because they don't live by the same rules.
So an ethos is a good thing to have if you're young and to try to figure out how to get one. How does a young person develop an ethos? I mean, they don't even know enough to know enough. What do they do to what does a parent do, to give their kid an ethos?
Well, I think one, leading by example. We talk in the military about having a military bearing. Parents have to have a parental bearing, when they're with their children, how they conduct themselves. I think ethos comes from that. Just like you have a military bearing as a non-commissioned officer, or even as an officer, you have to have a parental bearing to raise a subordinate to live by an ethos. It's really not that much different.
My friend Cindy, we grew up together. She says, how does someone like me, a mom, non-military, help with a Spartan Pledge?
Well, talk about it. There's videos. I suggest you go on social media and find videos and share those videos and say, hey, if you know somebody out there who's in the military, or if you know a first responder, anybody who's struggling, share that information. You never know where it's going to land. And it usually at least makes people think. Even if you're not a warfighter or first responder, by reading the pledge, you go, oh yeah, I should just pick up the phone and call someone I trust. So everybody's affected by it as soon as they see it. So if you could just spread it around, that does a lot of help, and it usually lands in pretty interesting places.
I'm going to put a link here to a Spartan Pledge. You may recognize the subject in it. It looks a lot like Boone. So I'm going to put that up here on the show notes. One of the things that we have, it's sort of code, backdoor code, at least for us Army folks. I can look at you and I say, Boone, how you doing? You go, yeah, I'm all right. I'm just driving on or whatever. And I'll say, hey, integrity check. Like, what's going on? And I can say those two words and it's time to cut through the bullshit, cut through the ego. It actually makes me tear up a little bit and be honest and say, and whatever it is, whether it's like, who did this, and if you check someone's integrity, it's on that person to have the backbone to say, this is on me, or this is my honest, this is where I'm being honest. And that doesn't really exist necessarily in the civilian world where you feel, literally like my eyes well up when I think about how important it is to check on someone or, to just get to the truth of something fast.
Yeah, I think it used to be, if you swore on a Bible, I mean, that's akin to, integrity checking someone. When you integrity check somebody, you're saying, hey, would you basically be willing to bet the whole farm? I mean, to bet everything I believe in you on this one thing. And I think it's important. I don't think we have that. Again, we don't have this eldership in our culture anymore where an older person would tell a younger person why it's important to tell the truth and how it will affect their lives over the time. We're getting information without wisdom. So we have to, again, go back and teach young people why it's important to seek wisdom.
Hey, we've been going at this for about an hour. I wanted to give you a chance to spin the mic around and ask me a couple of questions. You've been busy. I've been busy. What do you want to ask me?
Are those birds I hear in the background?
I am in a tent in my backyard. It's the studio, and there is a small engine airplane flying overhead, and there are for sure birds. Yes.
Okay. My bad. I got it. No, I was going to ask you. You've been working out. You've been talking about fitness. I saw some posts not long ago about that stuff. How's that working out for you? How are you feeling?
It's good. I've been battling a little bit lately, to be honest, a little depression, that kind of thing, kind of letting the world overwhelm me. And so I've not been to the pool, even though I know the minute I get out of the pool, I feel like $1,000,000. I've been battling getting through that first bubble to get into the pool, so, it's great when I do it. And you'll appreciate this. I swim with flippers on and a snorkel because that's what my body allows me to do for a long time. Like if I go out and I don't use flippers, I overuse my shoulders. And then, that already sounds painful.
Right.
And then when I don't use a snorkel, again, like by rotating my neck a bunch, it just gets my shoulders all activated bad. So, even then in the pool, it's a compromise and I can't let my ego get in my way, because if I overswim, I can go faster. But the point is to get the workout, to get the health benefit from it, not to be the world's greatest swimmer because, there's Olympian swimmer names on the wall at my pool. So there's no being a superstar here. But that doesn't mean that I don't have to battle that monster all the time where I'm trying to outperform myself and constantly get better. So the God's honest truth is I need to get back in the pool and get back to swimming 3 to 4 times a week because there's no way to feel bad. Like for at least 2 or 3 hours afterwards, you just feel like $1,000,000, it's just no way around it. So I'm telling myself and telling everybody, get into the pool, whatever it is. And if you don't like your workout, try a different workout, try the pool.
It's interesting. You're talking about something we talk about in FPL, which is when you get out of the military, adapt your exercise to something that you can do that is sustainable for a long period of time. you're probably not going to have to go run 5 miles or ruck 20 miles, like you did in the military. And it's probably not a good idea, but you might want to take up or consider yoga or swimming or rock climbing or activities that you can keep yourself busy consistently. So there is an element when you get out of the military. This is my question to you. How hard is it to get yourself? How hard has it been to get yourself out of military PT mindset, which as you get older and the injuries come back to haunt you and stuff, really isn't as possible as people think?
Yeah. And in my era of the military, it was push-ups, sit-ups, 2-mile run. So that was a form of physical fitness, but I never found it to be all that challenging. I was a max PT guy most of the time I was in the military. For me, it wasn't that hard to switch out of that because I was always an athlete. I always ran around. It wasn't really exercise. It was just like, hey, we're going to go, do PE for a little bit, maybe kick a ball once a week, that kind of thing. So I enjoyed it, but it was never for me like I understand, like if you're like, God, I can never get over the hump of sit-ups, or I can never get that 2-mile run time down. I was the guy that would finish 2-mile run, head back across track, grab someone and sprint them in, and then go across track and sprint them in. So it was never hard for me to do it. So getting out of that mindset and into something else wasn't really a problem. But I will say this about swimming, and I'll advocate for it. Not only is it a fantastic overall workout, you also develop, capacity to survive in the water. I mean, the more you're in the water, the better you are at dealing with it. But it's also a meditation. You don't have to count laps. You don't have to worry about form all the time. You really can just let your mind just scribble on the page and just let it go where it goes, and then get out of the pool 45 minutes later and you're done. So you've meditated, you've exercised, like you've dealt with mind, body, and spirit all in the same time. Very much like yoga.
Yeah. Yeah. Good deal, man. I need to do some swimming. I try and, I got this one shoulder that gives me a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But I like lifting weights, I like to lift weights. I like to go on long walks. The running, I think that's kind of over for me. I tried to start that again about a year ago, and my knee, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I'm with you. Maybe when I get new hips, I'll try running again. But
maybe when I get some new knees, I'm sitting on 7 knee surgeries.
Yeah,
it's come back to haunt me.
Well, I should be up near your way. Let's go grab some time in the pool, and then we can work on a stroke that'll work for your shoulder. Sometimes doing the stroke just less aggressively is all you need to do. And I'm telling you, throw some flippers on, your arms you can really focus on just making one motion with your arm, and find that track where your arm is in the best shape it's because at some point we got to work that arm into where that discomfort zone is and work in that space to get it stronger in that space. Yeah. PT is never like the comfortable, like arm up down. This doesn't hurt at all. They're like, now move it to the left. They're like, that hurts.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, man. Well, listen, I love checking in with you. I really do want to hook up with you next time I'm up there by you. Anything else besides FPL, besides the Spartan Pledge? What else do we need to know about Boone?
What else? Get ready next month. We're going to be making a big announcement on the new show. I've also got, besides FPL, over the next 2 months, I've got 2 new books coming out. One's called Call Sign Voodoo. The other one is called Psyoper. I think Psyoper is probably the one that I think people are going to enjoy the most because I'm telling both sides of what happened in Iraq from firsthand knowledge.
I love it. All right, man. Well, listen, I'm going to turn this thing off. Stand by.